It's 1967 and you're Popular Science. Who is the best person to predict what the future will look like in the year 2000? The most trusted source was the most trusted man in America. But who can you really trust with that sort of thing? We veterans of the 21st century are almost as far ahead of the year 2000 as they were behind it. We know that some of the predictions were freakishly accurate. And others, well, you're probably not watching this video from inside your hovercraft. We played Nostradamus, and we ended up with a proto-GPS that worked with road magnets? 1967 was probably the best and the worst time to speculate on the future. We were engulfed in the terrifying and amazing potential of the atom. We'd largely conquered polio and measles. The birth control pill changed a lot of things. We isolated human genes, we invented lasers, and TV started to get really good. The only thing more exciting than the present was thinking about what was going to happen next. News broadcaster Walter Cronkite was an outstanding choice for prognostication, and Popular Science touted him as having already been to the future. He'd made a CBS television series about the 21st century, interviewing scientific experts and tech minds to get a clearer picture of the unknown. And he'd seen a whole lot of the 20th century himself. He'd been a correspondent during World War II as part of the Writing 69th. The Army Air Forces embedded him in a B-17 Flying Fortress where he fired a .50 caliber machine gun at every German fighter that came into the neighborhood. He covered the Battle of the Bulge and the Nuremberg trials. And then he spent 3 years in Moscow detailing the infancy of the Cold War. By 1963, Cronkite was the voice for a generation. A public opinion poll named him the most trusted man in America. He interviewed President John F. Kennedy in the very first half-hour nightly news broadcast. And just months later, in what would become a culturally defining moment, he interrupted the soap opera As the World Turns to inform a nation about Kennedy's assassination. He was barely able to control his emotions, but he had a job to do. The future always starts with people, and the world's population in 1967 was 3 billion. How many lives would exist in 2000? We were a year away from the publication of Paul Ehrlich's The Population Bomb, which warned of catastrophic population growth. But Cronkite predicted that we'd have about 6 billion humans in the year 2000. The real number turned out to be 6.15 billion. That's pretty good. And then the most trusted man in America completely blew it. Not by being wrong, but by being right way too slowly. He'd spent time in Grumman's mobile base simulator, the MoLab, a four-wheeler built to traverse a moon we were only 2 years from landing on. Popular Science had actually covered the intense competition to develop a lunar rover. And what Cronkite saw as being the distant future was only 4 years away. In 1971, the Apollo 15 mission deployed the Lunar Roving Vehicle, and it was part of Apollos 16 and 17 too. Our real space odyssey was barreling right at him at a top speed of 12 miles per hour, and he never saw it coming. But his next prediction, well, he got it alarmingly right. General Motors' DARE system stood for Driver Aid Information and Routing. Cronkite said, "You simply push your card in, press a button, and you're ready to go." As I drove the test car, DARE navigated for me, telling me when to go straight, turn left, turn right, and so on. How does it work? Its decoder responds to magnets embedded in the roadway. Well, we don't have magnets paved into the roads. It's understandable that Cronkite didn't think satellite-based communication units would be in everyone's car. But DARE's dashboard panel displayed road signs, speed limits, road condition reports, and warnings of accidents ahead, with a built-in telephone that could call emergency services. Cronkite saw GPS, Waze, Google Maps, nearly everything we not only have now, but that we've come to expect. And it all started in the year 2000, when the US government ended the selective availability policy for GPS signals. That increased the accuracy of civilian units by tenfold and ushered in the era of in-car navigation systems. And then he went off the rails by saying that we'd all travel on one. Cronkite said the Alden Star car would carry an electric car cross-country on a rail built into the road, and when you arrive at your destination, you'll simply drive off the track and have your car free for local travel. That didn't happen in 2000, it's not happening now, and for 1,001 reasons, it's not on the way. but the cars are increasingly electric. He was also intrigued by the prospect of hovercrafts and especially small submarines, which he'd taken himself to a depth of 2,500 feet where he knew the minerals and the food were plentiful and untouched. Cronkite said that in the 21st century, as never before, we will be depending on this underwater wealth for survival. We're still trying to figure that one out. He did sit in Philco's medical monitoring chair, which he called the mechanical doctor. It gave him results from an electrocardiogram instantly, just like my Apple Watch does now. But despite Cronkite being convinced that in the home of the 21st century, all those nuisance chores you and your wife now have to take care of will be done by robots, the year 2000 had surprisingly little automation. And even now, instead of a fleet of Rosies from the Jetsons, it's a lot cheaper and more practical to have units specializing in one single task, like a little disc that your cat can ride on as it sucks up dirt. Cronkite imagined that the average household income after taxes in the year 2000 might easily be $15,000 to $25,000. That would have been 2 to 3 times more than the average household income in 1967. He said might easily be as if it were an optimistic projection, but the actual number in 2000 was much higher at $42,000. But was it really? This is the problem with trying to predict the future. It turns out that humanity's future is always full of actual humans. In nominal terms, that $42,000 was 5 times higher than 1967, and twice as high as Cronkite's cheerful dream. But real wages, a measure of earnings that adjusts for inflation and purchasing power, aren't very different from Cronkite's era. Even so, he couldn't have known that the same 100 hours of labor that bought a tiny grainy TV set in 1967 would buy you a 4K flat screen the size of your mattress, and that the labor itself would probably be a lot easier. Or that spending 7% of your annual income on a set of encyclopedias would be replaced by a device in everyone's pocket that accesses nearly all of humanity's knowledge instantly for free and updated in real time. Or that a gigabyte of data storage, which holds about 200 million words, 400,000 single-spaced pages, would cost today's equivalent of $1 million a decade after his predictions, and 1 single cent now. Because it turns out that the most significant innovations are the ones no expert ever could have predicted. And what we didn't know, and what Walter Cronkite didn't know, is that when it comes to predicting the future, the best possible outcome is that you're almost right, and more wrong than you ever could have imagined.